This week, we're talking all things rookies, from rookie players to rookie head coaches, and we're going to be explaining who we think will be the dark horse playoffs teams. All that and more coming up on the Gridiron. Welcome back to another weekly episode of the Gridiron, brought to you by House Call Sports. I'm Justin, that's Chris, and we are going to be talking all things rookies this week. But first, a quick word about our great sponsors over at Vivid Seats, the most trustworthy and easy to navigate ticketing website on the market. They have reliable and rewarding tickets along with a 100% buyer guarantee, which is perfect because we are officially 3 months away from the start of the NFL season. And with that comes the fact that you need to be safe and secure with getting those tickets to the games because, hey, NFL tickets are expensive. And that's why you need to go with Vivid Seats, because their transactions are always going to be safe and secure. You're going to get a full service customer care team and compensated for any canceled games. I wish I would have had that back in 2020 when they told us fans could not be there, but I digress. But if somehow football is not your thing, they have basketball, they have baseball, hockey, MMA, WWE, everything you need. So go over and hit the link in our description, go over to Vivid Seats and go sit vividly. That was a long read, but going into our first story, OTAs are officially underway. Rookie minicamp has ended. OTAs are underway. Mandatory minicamps are right around the corner. So we are that close to football season. And when you get to these off-season programs, a lot of stories come out about what players are showing flashes of brilliance early on and what players may be struggling a bit. And we are going to be focusing on the latter, as number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, seems to have going through some rookie struggles at the beginning of OTAs. Reports are going around left and right that he has been having a up and down time when it comes to the offense, when it comes to his performance. And as the starting quarterback of the Bears, when he is struggling in OTAs, that means the offseason is struggling. Chris, I'm going to go to you first. Should we be concerned about this, or is this just a giant overreaction?
So for me personally, just because of how early it is in the season, I am going to err on the side of saying it's probably a little bit of an overreaction. I just feel like there's just been so much surrounding Caleb Williams for like the last 2 years. I think the media is just salivating at any type of tidbit that they can get about him, and they are ready at the helm to say, hey, he's doing great, or oh, he struggled. Is that concern? Like they're just like all hands on deck paying attention to him. But I feel like it is no different really than any other rookie. At the end of the day, like as generational of a talent as he possibly can be, if he's developed correctly, he's a rookie. At the end of the day, he's a rookie. You know, he's trying to transition to the NFL. He's trying to get his feet wet, trying to get coordinated, trying to figure out how things are going to go. I have also heard the reports where maybe he's struggling to get the ball off on time, or struggling to get the playoff on time, even though it's provided to him, or maybe he's having a hard time with last minute adjustments with the defenses. I feel like that's what you expect out of a rookie. So the way that I kind of made myself kind of understand it to make it kind of a easier transition is to think about, it's gonna sound stupid, but think about go-karts, right? When you're a kid, you love go-karts. There's like the best thing in the world. You're driving a car, but you're only limited to go so fast and you can only go so far. Right? They're definitely handheld as far as where you can go and what turns you can make and this, that, and the other. But when that transitions into a full-blown motor vehicle and you are on the road in a 2,000-pound machine that can go 120 miles an hour, and it is infinite, the possibilities of what you can do, where you can maneuver, what happens, there's a transition period. You don't just get into a car after driving a go-kart and say, hey, I'm an expert. You don't do that. So I feel like it's very much the same with him. It's going to take him a little while. And I think that's definitely something that the media, the fans, they're going to have to learn. With all of the rookies, I feel like you're going to have to be patient. It is very early in the offseason. He is going to struggle. If anything, I feel like your best thing that you can look at is how he responds to what is happening, how he is progressing, if he is making the same mistake over and over and over again. So that's what I would look for as far as like how he responds to adversity, not so much that he's struggling. I'm okay with him struggling early. Struggle early. Learn what you need to work on and what you're probably good at for now. That's fine. But how he responds, I think, is going to make all the difference.
You know what? I 100% agree with you. And how he responds is going to dictate a lot of things. Because all the reports ever since his final season at USC has either been how cocky, arrogant, confident he is as a player, and about that time that he was crying in the stands with his mom after that one giant loss. Which, you know what? I'm actually okay with him doing that.
Same.
That shows that he's passionate about the game. And I have been somebody who has critiqued Caleb Williams. I think he could be a little too arrogant, but his first year in the NFL is going to say a lot. His character is going to be showing a lot for how he responds to this, and his play is going to show a lot throughout this year. I want to take this to a more broader thing before I focus solely on Caleb Williams. In a broader sense, what I am tired of seeing from media members, from NFL reporters, fans, is the fact that we stop letting rookies be rookies. Rookies are transitioning from the college level to a much faster pace in the NFL. So it makes so much sense that 1, 2, 15, 32, all 200 and something rookies that are coming into the NFL are going to have their struggles. And we as fans seem to expect them to just snap their fingers and have that same success in college that they had in the NFL. Very few players can do that. CJ Stroud is one of the exceptions. He did that. He made that transition look easy. Now we're going to see in his second year if that can continue, or was that like a 1 year kind of fluke. But it's more of a reality for these players to go through an adjustment period. My favorite example of this was Quentin Johnston. Everybody jumped on Quentin Johnston all his rookie year because he was dropping passes, he was making mental errors. He's a rookie. That's going to happen. The more important thing is year over year seeing development. That third year, that year right there is where you can judge them and see if they're going to continue ascending or if they're going to be descending. That's where you should be judging players, is in year 3. Year 1, especially OTAs in year 1, that's a whole different story.
The first OTAs on top of that.
Now let's get into Caleb Williams himself. Let's look at the situation going on in Chicago. What is it? Brand new head coach over there? Okay. Brand new offense altogether.
Yep.
Okay. Brand new quarterback. Guess what? All 3 of those things is going to take adjustments.
With new receivers as well.
Look at that. New receivers too.
And
the good thing about Caleb Williams' situation is that he has veterans around him that can ground him. That receiving core, 2 of them are 2 of the most high-producing receivers in NFL right now. You got Kevin Byard in the defense, which according to reports, he was the person to talk to Caleb Williams like, hey, you'll bounce back from this. You will be fine. So I like the fact that he has that support system around him in Chicago right now, because I feel like that's what he's going to need to lean on to keep him grounded, because you are a quarterback, the #1 overall pick. You are going to have cameras on you all day, every day, whenever they can be around. So just keep developing, keep improving. And then during the season, we're going to actually see where he is, because I personally think he has a lot that he has to work on. The #1 thing to me is ball security. I have seen this man fumble way too many times to where I feel comfortable. And this is coming from someone who has Daniel Jones as a quarterback. So I am done saying that. People, let rookies be rookies. Let them go through the struggles. The game will eventually slow down for them as the season prolongs. But speaking of rookies, we are going to talk about this offensive and defensive way too early Rookie of the Year predictions. Yes, it is only the end of May. We are going into June, and we will be talking about our picks for who we think is going to win the offensive and defensive Rookie of the Year awards. Remember, this is way too early, so if we're right, we're both geniuses. If we're wrong, you can't clown us. So, Chris, you go first with this. Who is your pick for offensive Rookie of the Year?
So, for offensive rookie, I feel like it's so easy. And I guess just because it's like the dark horse theme, I'm probably going to go people nobody is probably picking. And that is completely okay. That's why it's called an opinion. Perfectly fine if you disagree. So I think it is super easy to go with a quarterback. right? You have a couple new quarterbacks in, some that are probably going to start day one, probably a Caleb Williams. I'd assume JJ McCarthy is probably going to start over Sam Darnold. So Jaden Daniels is definitely starting. So those are 3 quarterbacks coming in right there who would be very easy, kind of like a no dummy pick. But for me, I am going to go to a wide receiver. And I am kind of shocked. I mean, I've seen some recent reports that are coming out, some videos that are coming out about him. But I don't feel like he has had the attention that he deserves. You get a lot of like the Keon Coleman is getting a ton of attention. Xavier Worthy, for good and bad reasons, he's getting a ton of attention. So I take Brian Thomas Jr. with the Jaguars to become the offensive rookie of the year. I think he is prime. He is in a good position to do so. You have a big arm, Trevor Lawrence, who has something to prove this year. I guarantee that's going to be, I'm going to say I'm guaranteeing. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I would assume that is going to be his number 1 target, his wide receiver 1. You have Gabe Davis and you have Christian Kirk. For me personally, I feel like they are very similar in nature. And I don't think they thrive in that X realm. So that's why you went out and you got Brian Thomas Jr., who I personally wanted for the Patriots, to be honest. So you have Brian Thomas Jr. He's a big receiver. I think he's like 6'4", 205 pounds. He's fast. I've seen a million videos already of Trevor Lawrence just airing the ball out with ease. And this guy is basically just striding. Like, it takes him 0 effort to get down the field. I just think that he is in a great position with, I'm not going to say a super successful organization with the last couple years, but one who's at least pushing for playoff contention. They're at least in the top of playoff contention. So they're going to be battling. As long as their defense shows up, I think that Brian Thomas Jr. has a fantastic opportunity to be one of the only wide receivers to take that, I think, other than Jamar Chase, to take the Rookie of the Year crown. So that is my pick.
And I will tell you, I like the pick with Brian Thomas Jr. because he is one of those picks in the first round that nobody's talking about a lot. Just
exactly.
Like he is not even slated to be the wide receiver 1 on his team, because you do have Christian Kirk, you do have Gabe Davis, you do have Evan Ingram on that team. So there's really not a lot of pressure on Brian Thomas Jr. to perform, which I feel like when you are coming into the NFL, the least amount of pressure you have, it leads to like the best outcome. Heck, look at Puka Nacua. How many of us really thought he was going to have the rookie season?
I don't know that any of us even knew his name for a good amount of time.
None of us even knew how to actually pronounce his name.
Right.
Up until he started cracking like 100-yard games every single week at one point.
Right. Absolutely.
But I think he has a great cast around him in that wide receiver room that will divert more attention away from him. Yep. And as long as he can get that connection with Trevor Lawrence, he may be poised for a great season. And I'm glad you went with the wide receiver route, because you and I were thinking the same. It's just we wanted 2 completely different players. See, my pick is also a first-round wide receiver. My pick is also tall, 6'3". Mine is also 214 pounds. And I'm staying in Chicago, and I'm saying Rome Odunze is far-fetched pick. Obviously, if he plays to that level of being contending for Rookie of the Year, essentially he's going head-to-head with Caleb Williams then. But it depends on how Caleb plays throughout the season. But Rome Odunze, I said it, if my Giants did not get Malik Neighbors, I wanted Odunze, because he gives you that height, weight, speed that everybody wants in a wide receiver 1. And the best thing, just like with Brian Thomas Jr., he does not have to be the wide receiver 1 this year. You got Keenan Allen, you got DJ Moore, and you got him as a 3-headed monster in that receiving core. He can simply be moved around from the outside. He could go into the inside. He can carve up defenses going up against CB2s, CB3s, nickels, and he can get his numbers that way. Now, of course, we know that the Rookie of the Year for the offense is essentially like the MVP award. If there is a quarterback who is performing, they will most likely get it. But I am glad that you and I went the route outside of the quarterback.
I agree.
Because it's just way too easy. A lot of people are going to say
Philip
Williams is going to get it.
Yep.
Some people are going to say that the quarterback from Washington, Jesus Christ, you just said
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels is going to get it. Jaden Daniels, I feel like honestly, is going to be the one to struggle the most.
I don't know if he's going to, I mean, no offense to him, but I don't know if he's going to last a full season. That is my concern with the way he is built, because we have a similar build. He knows a wide receiver, a similarly built individual by the name of Tyquan Thornton, who admitted his injuries comes when he hits the ground because he's skinny. Not so much more. He bulked up a little bit, at least in the chestrial regions. But that is my concern with Jaden Daniels, is if he's going to be able to withstand a full season of being hit. And they're going to target him because they're going to think he's running. So they're going to target him. So I don't know. We'll see.
I'm going to tell you what's going to be a good sign for this. September 15th, Giants at the Commanders.
Ooh.
Because you're going to have Jaden Daniels with Dexter Lawrence coming up the middle, Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau going to the edge. And if you somehow escape that, Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden are right there, right after you. So we're going to see how much he lasts. The one thing I will tell him, learn from Anthony Richardson and learn from Josh Allen. Two quarterbacks that are significantly larger than you. Yep. Don't take the hits that they can take.
Right.
Slide. Learn from Richardson's injury.
Yep.
Slide.
There's nothing wrong with it. Live to play another down.
Especially as a quarterback. Get out of bounds. Slide. Live to play another down. Don't turn the ball over, which is what I'm telling every quarterback that is coming in.
Absolutely. Because, if they have an opportunity to lay one on them, they're going to. They're absolutely going to take that shot. So they're not going to let up just because you're Jaden Daniels and because you're a quarterback. They're not going to let up.
Speaking of which, also, Jaden Daniels and to all the quarterbacks, if you throw a pick, actually when you throw a pick, because you are going to throw picks in your rookie year, do not try to go after the intercepting player because other players are going to want to lay you out right then and there. And if you are near the ball carrier, guess what? You are free reign to get hit. Speaking of hits, let's transition over to the defensive side, my favorite side of the football field. So who is your pick for defensive rookie of the year?
All right. So again, we're in this dark horse era right now. So for me, again, I've heard a lot of chitter chatter here in the last couple weeks or so about a lot of people thinking that Dallas Turner is kind of almost like a lock to get if he performs the way he's supposed to perform. So again, I'm going to go with somebody that a lot of people probably aren't talking about, which I feel like they should be. Especially with the setup that he has. I think he is a prime candidate, much like Brian Thomas Jr., where nobody's paying attention to him, and he might just wreck your entire backfield. And I'm talking about Braden Fisk. I am a huge fan of his. I watched him in the Senior Bowl, blew it up. I watched him in the Combine, absolute monster. Like he's a big dude. He's fast for his size. Mm-hmm. He's a complete mauler. He has an endless motor, and his number one goal is violence. And it is very obvious. Like he is out there to pancake people. That is just his main goal. And because you're gonna have Jared Verse on one side, you're also having to deal with a Kobe Turner. You're not gonna be able to double team all of them. So if they play him correctly, he is going to wreck the backfield. I guarantee it. He is going to wreck an offensive coordinator's dreams for the remainder of this season. They're going to hate having to deal with him. So that is my pick for a defensive rookie of the year that probably nobody is talking about.
And the thing is, after the Combine, everybody should have been talking about
They should have.
The number one thing for the Rams this offseason on defense was how were you going to replace Aaron Donald?
And I feel like two monsters to do that.
I feel like Braden Fisk brings the speed element that Donald had from that inside defensive end approach. And just look at the numbers for this guy. He's 6'4", 292. He has a 31-inch wingspan, which is fine. That's not the biggest thing, 31-inch arms. But 4.78 40-yard dash at 292 pounds. 1.68 10-yard split. The dude is the fastest interior defensive player that I saw at the combine. Yep. And with his presence and Kobe Turner, who, let's be honest, last year, again, one of those players that nobody really knew about.
Right. But, I mean, he had 9 sacks and nobody's talking about it.
The man is an absolute dog. And I had questions on would he be able to come close to that again with Donald not being there.
Yeah.
But with Braden Fisk being there, I feel like he can come close to it. Maybe not 9 sacks. Maybe he can get to like the 6-7 sack range. And I'm only saying that because my pick is going to get a majority of them. So I'm glad we're sticking with the Rams. I'm going Jared Verse.
I like it.
My defensive rookie of the year, which means the Rams are in that nice little party.
They're sneaky good, man, and that's coming up here really soon.
There's a bunch of reasons why I say that Jared Verse is my pick to be defensive rookie of the year. One, I feel like defensive rookie of the year is either always going to go to either a pass rusher or a defensive back. Whoever can ruin a quarterback season first is going to get it. And I feel like this year, even though defense wasn't really the focus, especially in the first round of this draft, I feel like there is a ton of talent, especially in the edge. And I was really choosing between Verse and Chop Robinson. And the key differences I have between these two is the fact that Jared Verse will get more opportunities because he is starting off rip, whereas Chop Robinson is going to be more in a rotational piece because you already have pass rushers out in Miami. So I don't think he's going to get as much playing time. 2, the LA Rams are going to be featured in a lot of primetime games. They have 5 total primetime games this season. And the more eyes you can get to your team, the more likely you are to actually be able to win some of these awards, because that's when people start saying your name, especially if you perform during these games. And like I mentioned, the team of Verse, Fisk, and Turner,
it's nasty.
Nasty.
That's nasty.
Party at the quarterback. And I feel like Jared Verse will probably be the one to get the most sacks out of it because he is a pure pass rusher. You have to deal with double teams if you're playing on the inside, which I feel like Turner's going to get a majority of it because of that 9 sack season. But this is going to have to learn how to deal with those too because, like we said, rookies are going to be rookies. And these offensive linemen in the NFL, they could push you too. Like if you don't have the strength of an Aaron Donald, you're going to get moved at least once in a while. So I feel like with all that said, if Verse can develop into the pass rusher that people think he can be, he is going to be holding up that defensive rookie of the year trophy at the end of it all.
I like it.
Now, I know we said we were going to go into dark horses, but I like to throw in a little bit of surprises. I have a question for you.
I might have an answer.
So the NFL has been trying to experiment when it comes to its Hard Knocks series. They did the original Hard Knocks where it's like all OTAs in the preseason. They started doing like the regular season ones. Now they're experimenting with an off-season Hard Knocks series. And out of all teams, they decided to pick my Giants for this, which, you know what? I will explain why I think this is going to be fun if they did it the right way, which I know they're not going to do but I want to get your take on Hard Knocks as a whole. And like, what do you feel about not only them choosing the Giants, but this whole off-season Hard Knocks series?
To be honest, I'm being honest, no disrespect to the NFL. I'm not really a huge fan of Hard Knocks, to be honest. I think it's kind of a distraction. No matter what era that you're doing it, whether it's cool to see as a fan, to see like kind of the behind the scenes type of stuff. But as someone who's kind of just like a football junkie, I don't really care, to be honest. I feel like it's really just a distraction. You have cameras there all the time, you have people mic'd up all the time. You can't tell me that they're not distracted by that or that there's not some type of pressure or whatever that's on them. And I feel like the league is already so difficult to have to deal with, and the season is already so long, and there's already so much that goes into trying to prepare yourself, that to have a camera crew on you at all times, like, look, we're doing a video and our videos are normally what, an hour? And there's already like the pressure of like, oh, gotta stay on, like make sure, you're more attentive and you're more cognizant of things that you're saying, what you're doing, how you're moving. So you can only imagine what it's like to have someone there during your off-season training. Like, no one wants to be at work and have a camera in their face. Personally, I don't think so. The only Hard Knock series that I have actually enjoyed, and that's just because of the underdog rate that they are, were the Lions, to be honest. And I quite enjoyed it. And it had everything to do with Dan Campbell and how he handled it, and just watching him and how he coaches. To me, that was fascinating. I have yet to see another Hard Knocks where I'm like, man, that was a really good series. I really enjoyed that. So I don't know. I do think it's quite a distraction. I'm sure it's a distraction for the players, the teams, the staff. You also think it's not just players and coaches that are involved. You have staff members now that are involved. You have lunch crews and cleaning crews and stuff like that. Like, do they really want to be on camera or have a camera in their building at all times? And I don't know. I'm not big on like the invasion of privacy type thing, but I do feel like that's kind of pushing it. And then continuously try different ways of like, oh, we're not only doing it during just off season, like training camp. Now we're going to do it during the regular season too. So when you have personal things going on in your life, you're still going to have camera crews on you at all times. Or now you want to do it going up to the draft. Like, there's already so much to do than to have to worry about someone recording you, or did you say something wrong? Did you have a hot mic? Like, it's just already, especially with cancel culture and all that stuff going on. To me, I just feel like it's a big distraction, and I'm not a huge fan of it.
I completely agree with you on it. And this is coming from somebody who went to college for television and radio production. I feel like having
that 5 times fast.
No, actually, I refuse to do that again. But it is like an invasion of privacy, having a camera in front of your face all day, every day, because NFL players and coaches already go through having cameras in their face a lot. Pre-game interviews, post-game interviews, off-season interviews, training camp interviews. There's always a camera and a microphone in front of their face all day, every day. And the fact that the NFL, which I understand, you are a business, you are trying to break out as much content as possible. And sometimes the content that they break out is actually good. I love the hot mic segments on their YouTube channel when they actually mic up players during it. And you actually see it all from a week to week thing. I enjoyed quarterbacks on Netflix. I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy wide receivers on Netflix as well. But I feel like there has to be that separation between the content side and the overall strategy, basically the actual team operations portions, because these are players that really do need to focus. They just found out what their schedules were recently. So now you're game planning for all of these games. There's a lot of sensitive information going on in meetings that I'm pretty sure they would not let out or want to let out during these meetings, during these weeks. But on the flip side, also as a fan who likes the drama and the storylines, I kind of get into it. Like, for this Giants offseason one, even though there's a lot of storylines that I know they're not going to probably talk about, there's some things from this last offseason that I want to see the behind the scenes of. I want to see the whole thing between Dable and Wink Martin. I want to see the whole thing about Daniel Jones and his injury rehab coming back from that torn ACL. I want to see about the Giants trying to trade up in the draft to get a quarterback. And even though this is so personal, I kind of want to see the storylines behind Darren Waller taking some time off, and will he or will he not retire? Now, some of these things are more personal and we may not actually see them, but those would be the things that I would want to see for this season.
Oh, he's getting divorced, isn't he?
Yeah.
Darren Waller?
Yeah. He's supposedly, but most likely that is the reason. He is going through a divorce right now, which is why he stepped away from football for a bit. And now they're just playing the will he, won't he actually retire? I feel like he should retire, but that's only because I think salary cap wise, the Giants saved way more money, close to $12 million. So I'm just like, go for it. If he doesn't retire, then great. We get Darren Waller. he gets to play like all of 6 games before something happens to his hamstring. I digress.
Fair enough.
I do believe this offseason, Hard Knocks would be a better thing than a training camp one because you're not actually disturbing the players during like the meetings and the training camps and the practices. I do feel like though they picked the wrong team for this year.
Even being a Giants fan?
I feel like they picked the wrong team because if you've been paying attention to how this offseason's gone, there is no better team to do an offseason Hard Knocks than the Kansas City Chiefs. Because the Chiefs have been going through probably one of the worst off seasons in terms of like negative storylines.
Oh yeah,
and I've seen a team go through in one off season. You had the whole thing with Harrison Butker. You had the whole thing with the wide receiver. Rice.
Yeah.
So you had
I think that started it off, didn't it?
It did start off. Then you had the thing with 2 of their linemen getting arrested.
No.
They're going for a 3-peat. Patrick Mahomes is still being Patrick Mahomes and doing Patrick Mahomes things. So I feel like there was just way more storylines if you did the Kansas City Chiefs than the New York Giants. But I just wanted to get some thoughts on that one because that is coming up soon, and I will be getting HBO Max just for that alone. So I am going to segue away from this painful thinking of my Giants getting harassed on camera, and we are going to go into our dark horses. We all know the teams that are expected to make the playoffs. Your Miami Dolphins, your Buffalo Bills most likely, your Kansas City Chiefs, your San Francisco 49ers. But let's be honest, week 16, 17, 18, it's the most fun because you get to see these run-in-the-mill, middle-of-the-pack teams fight over the final playoff spots. And Chris and I got our picks for an AFC and an NFC team that we think is going to sneak into the playoffs when nobody else thinks they may not do it. So, Chris, we're going to start backwards. Who is your NFC pick?
I've kind of went back and forth, to be honest. Like I'm up to this exact moment, I'm still going back and forth. So I'll split it. So I'm between the Minnesota Vikings and potentially the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
Yeah. So my big thing with the Seahawks is I feel like Geno Smith, I feel like is a solid vet, right? I know you're coming in kind of a new regime. Peter Carroll's not there anymore. But I just feel like the way that the schedules and stuff are shaking out, just for sake of time, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but they just, I feel like they have a middle of pack team, right? And I feel like they can win some of these games that are like, it could go either way. So I feel like they might be an 8 or a 9 win team, which may for the NFC be enough to get a wild card spot. So I'm between them and then the Minnesota Vikings. I feel like it's very hard to even though they lost Kirk Cousins, right? I mean, JJ McCarthy could surprise you, right? Needed kind of a solid, I do feel like he's kind of a more mobile Kirk Cousins in a way, if you think about it in that realm, which is kind of what you needed, right? They already have a fairly good offensive line. Then you have Justin Jefferson, who is Justin Jefferson. And then you go with, they have a tight end. They have Everett as tight end. And now you have Jordan Addison, who's kind of coming into his own as well. So I feel like he's kind of in off season and before the draft, there was a lot of talk that the Vikings are probably a good spot for any rookie to go. The best probably between that and the Bears. The only reason I'm not picking the Bears is just because I don't know. I'm not sure about them. It's just because like they've lacked the consistent development of a quarterback. Roman Dunze should play very well, but you don't really know. It's Keenan Allen's first year in the system. It's a new system to begin with. So, you don't know. Who did they pick up at running back?
The one that was on the Eagles.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So, I mean, in theory, they look great on paper, and that's why it scares me. Because they load it up on paper, and I just don't know if that's going to translate with Caleb, just because of how much pressure he's under. I just don't know if that's going to translate. So that scares me a little bit. I feel like JJ McCarthy doesn't have, kind of like we were just talking about, you don't have any expectations really. And same thing with the Seahawks. No one's really looking at you. No one's really paying attention to you. And 9 times out of 10, no one's really taking you seriously. So I feel like that is the best time. And that is almost like the epitome of a dark horse. If you win some games that maybe by 3 points or 1 point that you weren't technically supposed to win, and it's off of, the other team missed a field goal, or you got a safety or whatever, you could very well sneak in. So I could see them both of those teams kind of pushing towards the end, like I said, the last 2 games of the season, and somebody getting upset or somebody resting a team or whatever and getting beat, and having them sneak into the playoffs.
Hey, I am right there with you. And the crazy thing is, you named my NFC dark horse. I feel like we've been here all
a little bit.
I was fighting back and forth between this team and possibly even the Arizona Cardinals, because nobody's talking about the Cardinals who can sneak into that wild card picture. Yeah. But I feel like if I had to pick between the two and who I think will more likely make the playoffs as a wild card team, I have to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I feel like they are right now on paper the 3rd best team in the NFC North. Ooh. Obviously, you got the Lions, who are just coming off being this close to being in the Super Bowl. So they are the clear-cut number 1. The Packers, who are a young, on-the-rise team. But don't sleep on Minnesota. Yes, they're coming in with a brand new quarterback, but they are also coming in as a scrappy, set-up team for that quarterback to develop in properly. And I know we, make fun of their coaching staffs and all of that jazz. Like, can you do it? Can you not do it? I think the Vikings will shock people with just how many games they're going to win. Can they make the playoffs? They can. Will they? Yeah, which is why we have dark horse.
Right. That's the whole point.
This is one of those things that you have to wait till after the midpoint of the season to see.
Right.
If they are struggling at the very beginning and JJ McCarthy is throwing picks left, right, and center, then I would have some cause of concern. But if he plays a fraction to how clean he played in Michigan, I feel like they could win some games. And I feel like most of it has to do with the fact that their defense will carry them. For the most part, they have to, until you figure out this whole thing with, Jefferson, and are you going to pay him? Are you going to deal him? But I feel like they are going to be the team that will shock us the most this coming season on the NFC side. No. Who do you have as your dark horse?
No, I'm just kidding. I have to give them some type of clout, man. So again,
38 minutes into this recording.
Right. Took me a minute to say their name. No. So again, it's another one of those where I'm kind of like, I'm back and forth on 2 different teams because I can definitely see both of them. But I feel like one of them, I wouldn't necessarily call a dark horse. I would say it's, even though they didn't make the playoffs last year, I feel like it might be an expectation that they make it this year, and that's the Bengals. Because they do have Joe Burrow back. They bolstered up their offensive line. You still have T. Higgins. You still have Jamar Chase. That's already going to be hard to deal with. I think they picked up Zach Moss, who, if I heard correctly, I believe he was like 3rd ranked running back in like rushing yards and whatnot last season. So like it's going to be hard to kind of contend with that as long as their defense can keep up. But I feel like that's someone that's kind of expected, right? So not really a dark horse. They're kind of expected to make the playoffs if Joe Burrow can stay healthy throughout the entire season. So I'm going to go with the LA Chargers. Right. So if you think about it, they've made quite a few changes. They got rid of basically their entire starting offense outside of Justin Herbert. Everybody's gone. Eckler's gone. Allen's gone. Thomas is gone. So you would think like, oh man, they're decimated. Like they're probably not going to do much this year. And then they go and they get Jim Harbaugh, right? Who's coming off of a college championship. Personally, I like him as a coach. I've already kind of heard things out of training camp where they're saying that the training camp is different than it has been. Like there's no music. So clearly he's like a no nonsense guy. No music going on, big emphasis on conditioning. So he's going to have them primed and ready to play. Then you went out and you got what everybody kind of expects to be a generational offensive tackle in Joe Alt, which the writing was kind of on the wall when they did the whole coaches meeting. He kind of told you what he was going to do. No one believed him, but he kind of already gave you an idea what he's going to do. So he probably wants to run the ball. But then also, everybody's going to hate on me for it. I've already gotten hate for it. Don't care. You went out and got Lad McConkey, right? That's my boy. I feel like he was one of the cleanest route runners in the NFL draft. I was really big on him. So you went out and you got him. Like you said, you have a 2nd-year Quentin Johnston. And then you went out and you got Brendan Rice as well. So I just feel like they're setting up their squad to be young. If Justin Herbert can be Justin Herbert without the turnovers, I think they're going to be a hard team to contend with. I don't think they're getting a lot of respect right now, basically because there's a new regime and there's been a lot of people leaving and whatnot. But I do feel like they're going to be a team to contend with, and their schedule, to be honest, I'm not going to say it's easy, but not the toughest. I mean, so
they play in the AFC West. I mean, the only people you got to worry about is the reigning champions at that point.
Exactly. So they're a team that in the last maybe 2 or 3 games, if they're already bordering kind of a winning record, if they sneak in a couple games that they're not supposed to win, what if they go, what if they go 1-1 with Chiefs? It could happen. I mean, what if Patrick Mahomes is hurt? It could happen. So I feel like if you can split some of your divisional wins and you can get by with some of these, I'm not gonna say easy wins, but shouldn't be all that competitive. For instance, like the Panthers shouldn't be all that competitive. Then I feel like they're a team to watch out for.
I think for the Chargers, as long as nobody puts 60 points on their head again, I think you can call that a success.
I don't think happening. I don't think Harbaugh would allow that to happen.
Allow that. Otherwise, you're running full field sprints like the next practice over and over because he's kind of that old school head coach. Kind of reminds me of Tom Coughlin back when he was the Giants head coach. Kind of that no nonsense. Not the new school, like I'm caring about my players' mental health and we're going to have music playing and get the vibes going. No, he's like, we have a job to do. We're going to do that. That's why he has a national title on him and a tattoo of it as well, apparently.
I don't know if I would call that. Look, as someone who's extremely tatted, I don't know if I would call that a tattoo. I'd call it like a pinprick.
Not all of us can have like a full piece on us.
I'm just saying, though, this man has like 15-0. Like, come on.
That's okay. If you get through that needle, you know what?
How do we know it's not a stick-on? We don't know if it's just like...
We're going to have to find out in like week 8.
Right. Like, is that still there? I feel like that's temporary.
No, just like is it still there with the team that I think is going to be the AFC dark horse.
All right.
And I'm going to the AFC South, where we know who's going to win that division. Most likely Houston.
Okay.
Team that Pat McAfee loves with all his heart. But I think it's going to make some noise in that division, and that is the Colts. And there's a few reasons why I think the Colts are going to be that team. Why? Because 2 of your big name players are coming back healthy or healthier. And that is Anthony Richardson, your quarterback, and Jonathan Taylor, your running back. You have a really good on paper receiving core in Michael Pittman Jr., Downs, and Adonai Mitchell that you just drafted. So you have 3 receivers that are actually good. You have a star running back. I know we're like playing around with like should we pay running back? Should we not? Listen, Jonathan Taylor, when he's healthy.
It's a big if though. When he's healthy.
When he's healthy. That's the problem. If he stays healthy and Richardson doesn't take the hits that he takes, they can make some noise on offense. Now, defense is where they are a liability. I need them to improve on that defense. They were a bottom half of the league in terms of total defense in the NFL. I think they were like 28 when it came to like yards per game. And you really need to improve that. That's coming from, 31, 32 in like total yards per game. You gotta improve that. And I feel like they're not gonna play as bad on defense as they were last year. I think they're gonna learn. I think the offense is gonna do a much better job now that everybody is healthy. And assuming they can stay healthy, they will stay on the field longer, which means the defense gets more rest, which means they will play better down over down.
And they were ranked 20th, just so everyone knows, overall.
Oh, okay, 20 overall. I was thinking of, I think it was yards that they were like 20.
Gotcha.
But, yes, if they can improve the defense, I feel like the Colts can make noise. I don't think they're going to win the division. I would be crazy to think that they will win the division.
Fair.
But can they sneak into the wild card? I think so. The Bills barely made it in.
Fair. They shouldn't have made it in.
But, thanks to the collapse of the Miami Dolphins, they made it in. Sorry, Sammy. but that's the case. I feel like if one team collapses in the AFC, that should make the playoffs, and I think it might be the Bengals. The Bengals may not play. So. The Bengals may not play the way we expect the Bengals to play, but that's because we have high expectations of the Bengals, just because of Joe Burrow.
Absolutely.
Everything that's been going on, I feel like instead of playing up here, they're going to play here. They're going to find a way into the playoffs, but they're not going to be that team. At least not this year. Next year, maybe. So I honestly think that the Colts will make it. But there are other teams that I feel like can also sneak in there on both the AFC and the NFC front. And that also includes all of these teams that have first-year head coaches coming into the league. We'll be talking about that as well, because there has been a lot of coaching changes. You already heard us talk about one with Jim Harbaugh, and there have been plenty more. Whether you are talking about the Chargers, you are talking about the Falcons, you are talking about the Seahawks, you are talking about the Raiders, or you are talking about a handful of other teams. So, Chris, who do you think is going to have the best season between all of these first-year head coaches?
It's probably isn't going to come as that much of a shock, seeing as I just picked his team to be a dark horse into the playoffs. So for me, it is going to be Jim Harbaugh. My biggest reason is really like outside of Dan Quinn. I believe he is really the only one that has a lot of experience as a head coach. So this isn't new to him. He's on a new team, but it's not new to him. The process isn't new to him. Nothing's going to shock him. He knows how to deal with players. He's had to deal with different personalities between previously in the NFL and then going into college. So then you're dealing with young knuckleheads and then coming back to the NFL. So I don't think anything is really going to catch him off guard. So I feel like his transition and ease into it is going to be a lot smoother. And then I do think, especially now just coming off of a big college championship, I do feel like the players that are surrounded by him are probably more likely to buy into his system because of his history and because of his background. So most of the other head coaches, I mean, I know they've done well in their respective areas, but majority of them are new head coaches. So because of that, I do feel like there are some oddities that they're going to have to kind of get by and things they're going to have to try to figure out. And they might have a little bit of a harder time getting people to buy into their system. The only one I see, not that I'm a homer, is probably Gerard Mayo. And that's only because he's been with the Patriots forever. So he's not a new face in the building by any means. But as far as success rate goes, I do expect Jim Harbaugh to be very successful in his first year if everything is done correctly.
Okay, quick flip. Who do you think is going to have the worst one? Question.
I know. If I had to just pick one off top, I'm going to go either Panthers or Falcons. Yeah, my bet would probably be the Panthers with Dave Canales, but yeah, probably the Panthers. I think Dave Canales is going to have a tough, because he's already in a tough position. I mean, they had a terrible season last year. I can't say that I feel like Bryce Young is going to be all that confident coming into his second year. I don't know that they've really done a lot to really help him out much. And then you also had a lot of defensive departures. So you have a lot to deal with, a lot to figure out, a lot of systems to figure out. So I feel like it's going to be rough. I don't foresee them having a great season this year either. But yeah, my choice would either be Dave Canales or probably Raheem Morris with the Falcons.
And it also makes it a lot difficult when you're a first-year head coach and you don't have a first-round pick in your first draft.
Right.
You know, that makes it a little bit more difficult. And what makes this conversation even more difficult with you right now, Chris, is because I actually have the Falcons and the best season out of all of them.
The first time this whole damn show.
And you know what? There's a couple reasons why I think Raheem Morris will have the best season out of all of them. One, the division that they play in. It's the NFC.
Okay, that's fair.
The NFC South is, I'm sorry to say it, outside of maybe the NFC East too at times, probably the lowest division overall, pound for pound, in the entire NFL. Now, the Buccaneers shocked us last season. Well, more likely Baker Mayfield shocked us all. I don't think that's happening a second year in a row. The Saints disappointed us. or disappointed New Orleans, because I kind of had a feeling that they were going to struggle. The Falcons actually shocked a lot of teams with how well they played on defense. I can't say on offense because Arthur Smith does not know how to use his players.
He got some good ones.
And that's what I'm getting to. They have on paper a young and hungry, stacked team on both sides of the ball. Defense, they just need to continue developing. They showed flashes that they can swarm the ball, they can smother teams, and they can hold teams, but the offense also needs to help them out. And this offense has way too much talent to be wasted. Kirk Cousins is your quarterback. You're the best regular season quarterback. I'm not going to say the best quarterback because, we all know how he plays in the postseason. But in the regular season, he'll give you 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns in a regular season. Bijan Robinson, one of the more electrifying running backs to come into the league. Tyler Algier right behind him, which nobody talks about, and he still puts up numbers for a backup running back. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, as two of your better receiving targets. I feel like this is finally the time for all my fantasy owners. This may be the time to finally pick up Kyle Pitts with some expectation.
Hard pass.
You got to pick him first overall, first round. But everybody's going to go after the Travis Kelce's. Everybody is going to go after the top of the top tight end prospects. He's going to be somewhere in those mid to late rounds where you could just pick him up. And then all of a sudden, when he starts competing, you can either leverage him for a better player or you can start him. But there's questions. There's questions to all these dark horse teams. There's questions with, Raheem Morris as a coach, because we all expected Bill Belichick to be the head coach. Now, whatever happened between the Falcons organization and Bill Belichick on those negotiation fronts, that they never hired him, who knows? We may never know. We may only know based on, the roast of Tom Brady. But, hey, how are you also going to handle the whole Michael Penix thing? Because one thing we know about Kirk Cousins, while he is good during the regular season, he does take a lot of hits. His fault. I have seen him with the Commanders. I have seen him with the Vikings. I have seen him. Well, I'm going to be seeing him now with the Falcons. He has never had the best offensive lines around him, which has always led him to getting hit a lot, which always put his durability in question. So if Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, is coming back from a season-ending injury, how are you going to perform? And if you can't perform, how many games is it going to be before the good folks over in Atlanta start calling for Penix?
Fair. Exactly. And that would be my biggest concern with the Falcons. In a way, you have a great contingency plan. And I heard Joy Taylor actually talk about this at the draft that I believe I posted on the House Call Sports. But she spoke about this exact thing as far as the picking of Penix and of Kirk Cousins. But in a way, you have a great contingency plan, because if you think it's one or two scenarios, either Kirk Cousins comes back and maybe he doesn't play all that well, then Michael Penix Jr. is old enough, right? He's not like a young, immature guy that needs to learn. You have technically a good quarterback right behind him. So you don't necessarily have to worry about so much about getting your rookie ready. Yes, there's going to be a transition period, but you expect Kirk Cousins to start, right? So he's at least going to start, let's just say 8 games, and you see where he's at. The question now is going to be, if he's playing terrible in those 8 games, are they going to give in to the pressure of starting Penix? Or are they just going to be like, we're just going to let Kirk be Kirk? Or does Kirk get hurt again? Because that is also a possibility. He's 35 years old. He's coming off of an ACL here. So you don't know how his body's going to respond to that, especially being older. Not everybody is Mr. Guru Aaron Rodgers and can get all of their stuff healed in a ridiculous amount of time. I don't know what kind of voodoo he did, but nonetheless, like you say, I digress. But my man's 35 years old, right? And I'm 36. I know the injuries I get now take me much longer to heal than it did when I was in my 20s. So with him coming off of that, I do feel like it was kind of a smart. I didn't like it in the beginning. I did not like the Penix pick in the beginning. But when you really start deep diving into possibilities and what could happen, they kind of set themselves up in a good spot. Best case scenario, Kirk Cousins plays great. They got a good rookie quarterback, or their contingency plan, or their future franchise quarterback, whatever you want to call them, sitting right there. And they do them like Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love style. Just let him sit for a couple years until Kirk Cousins retires, and then you start him. Or he goes to a different team, and then you start him. So I could see that. But again, the big question is obviously it's going to be his injury and how that relates. And then also, are those young players that you were talking about going to step up? Like, I get it, they didn't have great quarterback play, but that's, to me, is where you show like you are that guy. Whether it's wide receiver, running back, tight end, whatever it is, you should be able to dominate, period. So, like, there are some throws that I saw that Kyle Pitts, the ball was right there. Maybe it was a little underthrown or a little overthrown, but if you would have reached, jumped, twerked your body somehow, you probably would have at least been able to make a play on it or get close enough to catch it. But you just don't see that drive, that dog that you want to see out of an aggressive player. So those players are definitely going to have to step up. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But I do like that you finally came over to my side about the whole Michael Penix thing, because I talked about it after they picked him up, the week after when we were reviewing this whole thing. Best case scenario, Kirk Cousins plays 2 years. He collects $100 million. That's the guaranteed money.
And he's out.
Then you have cost control over Michael Penix for at least another 3 years. If you franchise him, then you got 4 total years.
Yeah,
so
it's valid.
The Falcons are doing what the Packers have done. The Packers constantly, I don't know how they do it. Who do they have locked up in the basement of Lambeau Field that just knows how to pick quarterbacks? But basically, they're taking that same strategy and implementing it. And time will tell how smart of a move that this was. But, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming up at the 1 hour mark. So we will be calling it here in the Gridiron. I am Justin. That was Chris. It was a pleasure. Be sure to comment down below who you thought was the dark horse team, who you think is winning Rookie of the Year, and your thoughts on this show overall. And we will catch you next week. No, be rude. Peace, y'all.
Peace.